next session is another interesting topic, venous flaps. We are all very curious about these venous flaps, what they are and where they are used. Are they really working, and how do you get them working? And to give a talk on venous flaps, we have Colonel Dr. Gopi Ranganathan. He has done his MCH in plastic surgery from Government Stanley Medical College Hospital from 2008 to 2011. He was the recipient of the Professor CRS Second Best Outgoing Student Plastic Surgery Medal Exams in 2011 and the recipient of the Professor Sam C. Bose Best Audit and Research Paper in India in Plastic Surgery in 2014-15 and the Young Scientist India ICMR in 2015. He is right now the Professor and Senior Advisor at the Department of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, Command Hospital and AFMC Pune. His fields of interest are vascularized composite allotransplantation, microsurgery, and hand surgery. And to moderate this session, we have the most relevant person, Professor Dr. Mukund Ramachandra Thatte. He is the consultant and academic head of plastic surgery, Bombay Hospital and Medical Research Center, head of the Bhai Jarbai Badia Hospital for Children, Mumbai, and the Shushrusha Citizens Cooperative Hospital, SRCC NH Children's Hospital, Mumbai. It was the path-breaking paper in April 1993 in the PRS journal, where he, along with Dr. Ravin Thatte, published a paper on venous flaps. And there I remember seeing a very interesting quote from Sushruta, quoted from Sushruta's Sanskrit verse on continuity brings viability, something like that. I'm sure Dr. Mukund Thatte will be able to enlighten us on this. Mukund Thatte, sir, without further ado, I hand over the session to you. Welcome, Dr. Gopi and Dr. Mukund Thatte.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you very much, Dr. Karthikeyan. This is indeed an honor for me to be a moderator for this session. And I particularly like your approach of getting rid of the usual suspects and bringing the next generation into the limelight. It is much needed, otherwise the usual suspects keep talking and talking and talking. So I really love this approach. I even send the link to my sons to say, see how they are doing it, and this is the way forward, because otherwise we don't have proper succession planning in our country. Now, just to correct some history, I actually did the venous flap work in 1985 as a part of my MCH plastic surgery thesis. And the first paper was published in 86 or 87 as an experimental paper on dogs, and the second paper again experimentally in 1988. And then we published the clinical papers as well on saphenous venous flap, cephalic venous flap, so on and so forth. The 93 paper that you alluded to was actually a review in PRS. There is something in PRS called special topics. So the then editor asked us to write on the special topic, which is why. But as always, I will not hog the limelight. Can I request Dr. Gopi Ranganathan to enlighten us on venous flaps? Welcome, Gopi.
Sir. Good evening, sirs, once again, and thank you so much. And it's a real honor to be presenting in a forum generated by my teacher and in front of my venous flap teacher who's sitting here, who brought the light into it. So like an Ekalavya, I'll share my screen, and yeah. The first slide itself is a thank you slide. So yeah. So I would be particularly concentrating on the arterial venous flap, though I shall be discussing this venous flap, but I shall be particularly concentrating on how to reconstruct the arterial venous flap and discuss about the possibilities. My first slide is the salutation to my teacher. Like I said, Om Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha. To my teacher, Dr. GK, who's designing this audience, and as well as like an Ekalavya to Dr. Mukund Thatte. I shall be discussing my topic under the following headings. So we all know what is a flap. It's like in the literature it says it's like a loose hanging or which covers an opening. But in surgery we all know that it is an isolated unit of tissue perfused by its own blood supply. That is artery supplies and vein drains. This is the concept that we are trying to change while saying only the vein can both supply and drain. to schematically see that this is the artery which flows in and it egresses by the vein. The venous flap, which was described by Tate sir, and is like both ingress and egress by the veins, and he further qualified as a type 3, which I'll be showing, that when when vein is arterialized, when an artery is connected to the ingressing vein to make it an arterialized free flap, what happens and how we can derive or can make flaps to be useful in, especially in the digits, is the topic. Okay, what is the benefit? Why should we do venous flaps? Because we all know that it did not sacrifice an artery of the donor side, the known artery, and they don't require a very deep dissection. So it makes the procedure very easy, and that, of course, hence the decrease in the morbidity. It is naturally thinner, pliable, because it just contains skin and the venous plexus and the subcutaneous fat. And it can also be transferred simultaneously in new advances to reconstruct the defects wherever there are tendons and vessels are required. As a brief overview, when there is a defect, we debride, we isolate the vessels, the recipient vessels, the artery and the vein. We plan in reverse to see a venous flap. We harvest a venous flap where there is an ingress and egress, and we insert the flap and then anastomose it to the vessels, as we're going to discuss about it. Close the donor site as primarily, and have a good follow-up, a good flap progress to entail a good quality skin cover, especially on the digits. So everything starts with the history. Nakayama started this in animal experience in 1981, but later, as Sarah said, he drew the conclusions. We'll be showing the next slides during the time of 83 to 90, and Koshima started this as a free flap. Okay, the classified Tate sir in his paper had classified this as 3 types, where the type 1 was where there is a inflow, there is a single vessel only, where the vein survives at both to and fro motions. Type 2 was bipedical, or so-called flow-through flap, where there is a venous flow only and venous egress. And third was where an artery is connected to this vein of ingress, so to make an arterial flap. This is all pedicle, which is later the same concept was used as a venous flap for a free flap. Like sir had said, that the paper had started many publications by sir and the team during the 80s, defining the venous flaps, where he has discussed in PRS, and I had also the slide for the special article, but as sir has already said, he had discussed the venous flaps. So this is the origin of the venous flaps and the idea. The course through the time, many people tried to use the arterial venous flap in many studies, but we have come to the modern age where this has been proposed as a very good alternative in digital defects, especially smaller digital defects. Okay, what is the physiology? Now that we all know the classical flap has got a Harvinian system, artery, capillary, outflow is by the oscillating veins and veins. But some of the theories proposed where the perivenous alular tissue providing smaller arteries to survival of the flaps. Inada and Peter also said that internal vascular anatomy, wherein high density of the venous network and the greater number of oscillating veins in the flap defines the survival. It was also by Pitt proposed that there was a neovascularization in the recipient bed. This is, I said, this is the to and fro, which was considered a movement where both venous channels, where there's an ingress and outgress, and it proposed a bidirectional flow in arterial vein, providing a good viability of the flap. But this, apart from this theory, the modern theories in Yan proposed in 2010 as the more defining theory in terms of AV shunting. When there is a reverse flow through the venous system, it paralyzes the anteriovenous shunts and forms a proper arterial venous flow through the venous system itself, and thus shunting the flow to the artery and ingressing it as a venous flow. There is also a theory of a proposal of reverse flow, or a reversal because of the pressure through the vein, the ingressing vein, through the pressure because of pressure difference into the venules and through venules into the capillaries, making it a anatomical or physiological flow. There was also the capillary bypass theory, which proposed that the flow through venous system without entrance into arterial side, that is, it bypasses the entire capillary and there is only flow through the oscillating veins, which was considered enough for the viability of such a flap. But in combination, still there is no consensus, and more studies are on to know the exact physiology. Why is venous flap was not made famous during this time, since 1889 or during 80s? Now it is 2020, because many authors or many surgeons found a postoperative congestion and large necrosis rate in such a flap. So I see one of the papers, they said up to 42 to 50%. Naturally, when such a large necrosis rate is there, the flap is not popular. So there were some modifications planned or proposed by some authors to make it more viable, as the flap was very thin, very easy. So why can't we make it more viable by some of the modifications? The modifications were in terms of delay, in terms of having more regressing vein, outflow vein, to have a more pressure outlet, and of course, proposal by Lin of a shunt restriction, where a flap, if you see the diagram, a clip is placed to make a two system. There is one arterial system which is also blocked, and there is a venous system, which is the system is made continuous by the tissue which is in situ. So there is an artery, there is a flow through the tissue, and then which is collected by the vein, and it forms a venous drainage. This concept of shunt restriction is what we have used in this, where we heard the topic in the when the hand conference was there in Delhi, and we tried to do and see the flaps, if it is, we can make it viable. So when we planned, like I said, most of the authors had proposed this as a very good flap for digital defects in a small to moderate. So we also planned. We first in the surgical procedure, we debride and identify the artery. A good artery is required in a digital size to plan in reverse for the flap size and the inset. Okay, that becomes, and there is a vein naturally, because this identification of the vein and the artery is the limiting step for planning the our flap. Most of the, or rather all the flaps we had planned is from the ipsilateral forearm. So it was all done under regional anesthesia whenever permitted. And we initially raised to 100 millimeter to see the veins, the pattern, and we tried to design the flap to include as much as veins within the flap. So these are the usual design, the flaps which are the veins which are available multi-patterns. We usually form we plan for one ingress, and that is the arterial to form it an arterial conduit, and then egress vein to include as much vessel. The more distal it is to the wrist, that is the wrist size, it is more approximated or size easy. It matches that of the digits, especially in the proximal phalanx. So this is the planning. This is the design, and this is the dissection. So there is, we first incise over the proximal, the distal part to make the arterial conduit. We try to dissect the vein very carefully. Then the flap, and it is usually dissected at the level of the below the subcutaneous tissue, not to include the fascia, to leave the fascia behind, and to have the vein. And this is the channel where we proposed, which will be the venous drainage channel for us. So if you try to see the video, once the flap is raised, we see the venous pattern outflow and the blood which is there, flow there, and we try to shunt it. What is shunting? We place a hemoclip, just a hemoclip, and I will explain the procedure of shunting in my further slides. We procedure to make it a shunt restricted. Yeah. So that was a Y kind of a design. Here is the most commonly design which is there, which is H, which include two parallel veins with the communication. With the communication, the H is blocked by the hemoclip to make it a shunt restricted. And naturally after that, there is an anastomosis done from the flap side vein to the arterial side of the digits. Yeah. So in the post-op schedule, we usually keep the plaster for the 3 weeks with the monitoring window. We cut open the plaster to monitor because this monitoring is important, because as we all saw, and as we also see in this literature as well as in our study, there is a epidermolysis that we need to monitor to see that viability of the flap. We've started giving LMWH in these patients for 5 days like a free flap, and initially before the harvest, we include heparin as a 5,000 units. And in the post-op, after 3 weeks, the POP is taken out, we go on a schedule of a physiotherapy. So this is one of the flap where we have tried to give a large flap to the proximal phalanx, where this is the flap which has a length which was folded to have artery and vein at the distal part, proximal and distal part, and we see a good recovery of the hand movements after the physiotherapy. This is a small video by the
मेरा 20 मई 2019 को इलेक्ट्रिक बर्न हुआ था।
Sorry for the Hindi version, but most of the patients are from the
कमांड हॉस्पिटल में 29 मई को सीजरिंग हुआ। यहाँ से वो चमड़ा निकाल के सिंगल में लगाया और सक्सेस हुआ है, और मैं भी तकरीबन घर के सभी काम कर लेता हूँ, बाइक भी चला लेता हूँ।
Thank you. So what are the key steps in designing such a flap? Like I said, the more key is a venous pattern of the flow that is there in the wrist, which defines the flap survival. And then our planning, whether to include as an antegrade or a retrograde flow of flaps, which again I shall explain. Third is, as I've been trying to tell you, that shunt restriction, where to restrict, where to put the clip, how to put the clip is a key step. And of course, the anticoagulation, we have now started following this, but some of the authors in the eastern side, they don't give the anticoagulation. And days of immobilization, it's naturally for 2 to 3 weeks. We follow it 3 weeks. So some of the patterns have been described by the author and defined in terms of the alphabets. So this is a linear pattern. When the flap is designed on a single vein, it's called a linear pattern. When there is a reverse Y or a forward Y, when there is a branching, and we try to include as much of the veins. There is also H, which we have used commonly. There is a good amount of vein, a parallel vein on either side of the flap with a communication in between. So this is easy for us to shunt restrict. And there's of course another rarer flap which have got multiple veins, where we have to decide which forms the artery and which form the egress vein. So like to include as another, to emphasize on shunt restriction, it acts akin to the venous valve. So it creates two areas of high and a low physiological pressure within the flap. So we think that the physiology or the viability of flaps becomes better with increasing the pressure and not forming a continuous AV fistula, which would happen if we don't put a shunt restriction on. The low pressure in the remaining distal length or the venous allows for the venous flood to re-enter and drain. This is the concept that has been proposed, and we follow it. So this makes the venous return more physiological, resulting in reduced rate of venous congestion and more viability. Where to apply hemoclips also been designed by study, where they found out that a proximal ligation or proximal clip is better than a distal clip. I shall explain it in another diagram. So what do we do when there is a parallel pattern in the flap? When there are two, there is no need to do it. It's already physiologically shunt restricted. When there is H pattern, we try to restrict or put a clip amongst the communication. When there is a lambda pattern, where is an inverse Y, we try to put a clip on the proximal part where it ends and joins the vein. We try to have as much large venous network rather than an arterial network. Similarly here, we try to put a clip at the branching to include a one distal, which does not make it continuous as a venous channel, to include as much veins in the flaps. And of course, when we have nothing but a straight, only one vein which is there in the flap, and we need to put a clip in between to have an artery as well as a vein. My other rarer branch are there, but I shall not harp on it. So that was about the shunt restriction. How to design the flap? So we can have a flap that is proximal from the wrist, which goes to the distal, that is palm. So there is the flow can be from here to here, or from both can be designed coming from the forearm side. So this is where, so see, we can have an antegrade artery, antegrade vein, or a retrograde artery and antegrade vein. So these are the combination, but we always go for where there is a, where there is a retrograde artery, where there is a flow, we form a reverse venous flap. So this forms our artery, and the egress is natural like vein, which is formed as a prograde or the antegrade vein. So this forms our most flaps which have been designed most. So we try to follow the physiology where this reverse vein or this forms the artery, and that is which is more still to the hand or wrist, and this to the which is concept where it is more to the forearm or proximal forearm forms the naturally draining vein. In our study, we have which were sent for publication. We got a 25 flaps where we tried to analyze like viability of such a flap. And we found the flaps. We have designed flaps in most of the age group, and predominant flaps were designed for trauma. Although we did do for 2 cases in post-burn the contractures, which is there in electrical burns, and 3 as a raw area resulting from a post-infective scenario. Okay, like Wu, the author, one of the famous authors who have classified the venous flaps, we have also tried to design the venous flap in terms of square areas. This is all for the flaps designed for the digits. So naturally, they have been designed as 5 to 10 centimeter square area or surface area, 10 to 15 centimeter square, and 15 to 20 centimeter square. As we have seen that it is for, we have designed maximum for the moderate size, that is 10 to 15 centimeter square surface area flaps. So when we analyzed our 25 cases for the pattern where we have harvested and we have tried to shunt the flap, shunt restrict the flap, we have formed that majority around the H pattern. Like I said, we have taken the H flap, which is convenient and which is given us more, which is ease for harvesting it. We try to include as much veins. Of course, in other size of pattern also 5, and the Y pattern we have taken 5, and reverse Y pattern 3, and then a parallel vein pattern in one case. Where have we put this flap? In the hands, in the digits especially. Most cases were in the terminal defects. There were 9 plus 1, 10 to 2, 12 cases, and mid and the proximal sides were equal in number. So out of the 25 flaps, we found that 76% had a good outcome, rather a successful outcome, partially successful, which I'll show the diagrams, whether there was a rim loss or a partial central loss were in there in 3 flaps, and there was total loss in 3 full flaps. Okay. Since congestion was decided, congestion is a factor which, or the formula which is given in all the flaps. We also followed up to see how does this congestion epidermolysis occur in our flaps. Congestion we saw like it occurs in 3 to 5 days after we do the flap. Initially it looks all good, but after that the congestion begins. We had in almost 50% of the flaps we had congestions. Epidermolysis, where the peeling of the epidermis is there on 5th to 10 days, we found that 40% of the flaps had epidermolysis. And as I've already said, that only 3 cases were there where we had a total loss. So this was the case where we had a partial loss, where there was a rim failure. There was a rim loss of the rim. Here, the entire flap, only the central part failed. We could not analyze why, but there was a 2 sides of the flap survived, and there was a central failure. And here was a tip defect, which is a complete failure. I try to bring out the successful flaps through my illustrations for the, especially now in the distal defects. We have good settling down flaps in many, for especially in small or moderate size defects. We found this very useful in when there was a stump we need to cover, where the FDS insertion was in situ, the joint was functioning, and we needed to cover the stump. We have used this in 2 or 3 cases where we found that this was a very good alternative and provides a good quality skin cover for such a defect. We also used it when there is a dorsal defect, moderate size dorsal defect. We tried to use it for the entire little finger dorsal surface area in one of the cases, and we found that it gives a good post-operative well settled flap in the follow-up. Proximal defects, like I said, like I showed in the earlier cases, we tried to design it by folding the flap because we wanted to have artery and a vein physiological. We didn't want to do a broad flap because we have always closed our donor side defect in our forearm by primarily. Hence, to design that, we took a flap, we designed as if it folds over, where there is the artery is by the digital vessel at the web space, and the dorsum we had a vein draining vein, and we had a good post-op scenario in such a large flap. We also had success in the web defects, where it was useful in the web. Donor site, I have already mentioned, all our donor sites were closed primarily, giving a very good scar in the post-operative scenario, although we did encounter hypertrophy in a couple of cases, which we tried to address by the usual means of the flap scar methods, massage methods. So how does the survival in terms of etiology, when we try to compare in terms of etiology and defect, we try to see our success rate. We found that in post-traumatic, whenever it is in acute, our success rate was very high. These are the cases where in trauma, where there was a delayed reconstruction, where the patient was referred after a trauma and he came to us. Such are the cases. But whenever we try to do it in an acute stages, within 72 hours, we naturally had a higher successive rate or success rate in such a flap. In post-burn, we had created the surgical defect, so both the flaps were success for us. Whereas post-infective area, more than 50% failed. So we kind of don't we restrict ourselves whenever there is a post-infective raw area, when there is an inflammation which is not settled, to use such a venous flap. So naturally it goes out for a surgically created raw area and for a more acute defects of the digits. Venous pattern and survival, like I said, majority were H-type and majority of the such flaps survived. Although we had encountered similar 1-1 case failure in each of the flaps. Maybe this is not the pattern which defines the failure, or lately surgical skills are also there, but we have the H flaps, which was easier, and it gave us more success for us. I have already shown in terms of the size of the defects. When we large flaps, we tried to do, we had equal large flaps, we had failures, 1 success, 1 failure. Majority were done for the moderate size defect to provide good quality skin cover, and in that we have found success in a good way. So what are the limitations in our study? Though our sample is very small, we have not used for comparison for some other flap. We need to follow up more in our cases, and we need to do sensory mapping to see whether it is comparable to other forms of reconstruction. The authors in the modern times have they have designed the flaps to include parts of bone and tendon also in digital defects. This is the advancement where they harvest the palmaris longus in the forearm, and they use it as an extensor reconstruction of in the dorsal defects. Larger defects have been designed by many authors for the intraoral reconstructions and the lower limbs. And more and more studies are being done, especially in the Korea and China, where they propose it may be could turn as a workhorse if you understand the physiology of the flap. To conclude, such an arterial venous flap, it could be a very viable alternative for small to moderate digital defects in our scenario, where especially patient is unwilling for other donor sites or other donor sites are unavailable. With the optimum design could include an antegrade flow to maintain the physiology, and maximum veins should be in the center, and width or shunt restriction, that is, as I said, to possibly to improve the physiology and viability of the flap. And such a designed flap is very easy to harvest and gives a very thin layer, and could give a patient comfort or a patient outcome. It provides a good solution. Thank you, sir. I just finished my presentation, sir. Hello.
Yeah.
I finished my presentation, sir.
Yeah, can you just stop share screen?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much, Gopi. I think you gave an excellent presentation with the literature review. Few points I want to make.
Sir.
For historical purpose.
Sir.
Because Dr. Karthikeyan referred to it, what we wrote in the paper.
Yes, sir.
So this started as a thesis for me, and my teacher, Dr. Ravin Thatte, one day called me to his cabin and said, if fellow can be kept alive, entire body on a heart-lung machine, why not a flap? So that is how my thesis started. So I started taking out flaps in dogs and cannulating the artery and cannulating the vein and connecting it to a heart-lung machine, where I went to cardiac surgery theatre and got oxygenated ringer lactate with glucose. Sir. And I said to myself, if I can perfuse this for 4 days, then we will get neovascularization. However, that experiment failed completely, because the heart-lung machine is not designed to pump through an artery which is 1 millimeter in diameter. So while we were doing that, Semin Bayek's paper came, but Semin Bayek's paper promoted us to do venous flap work, and to our surprise, we started getting unipedicle, that is type 1 venous flap successes, which we also replicated in the clinical scenario. About the physiology, I think the paper we wrote in 1989, where one of the co-authors then subsequently retired as the director of IIT Bombay, that is Devang Khakkar, D.V. Khakkar. That paper has given the complete mathematics of the fluid dynamics of unipedicle venous flaps, not bipedicle.
Right, sir.
To my great surprise, my friend Alexander George is in the audience. In one of the first papers on arterial venous flap, I have written with Alex and Dr. Ravin Thatte. Alex, you can put your video on. Alex is a very shy chap, he won't. So anyway, I don't know if you have seen that paper. That was a very large flap we did on the dorsum of the foot. Now,
I collected them, sir.
Yeah, coming to this issue of the valves, one of the other things I want to mention is valves stop functioning if the nerve is cut. This has been proven very elegantly. I forget the name of the author, but at that time he was one of the editors of the British Journal, I think. And he did a simple experiment. He put a dye in a vein retrogradely, and the dye would not flow. Then he put local anesthetic around the vein, and the vein opened and the dye started flowing. That was, I think, a very lovely paper. And as far as your arterial venous flaps are concerned, therefore, if you pay a little attention to the subcutaneous nerves and cut them, you might get less congestion because veins will open up much more.
Thank you, sir.
So that it will help your shunt concept.
Sure.
But I think you are doing great work, and you should now graduate to bigger flaps on other areas. I noticed one of the questions in the chat box that perhaps the infection is the cause of the failure in the failed flaps higher in the infection category. I personally think that metabolically venous flaps in the first few days will not be as robust as normal physiology flaps, and therefore in the presence of a aggressive infection they may not cope as well. So perhaps a active infection may be a contraindication to doing them. I also want to urge you to do unipedical venous flaps, which are extremely simple to do, involve no microsurgery. You can do it in 15 minutes. And try the unipedical venous flaps. Finally, one point I want to make, venous flaps settle like no other flaps.
Yes.
They start looking like a well-settled full thickness graft after a few months are over. And therefore are ideal to do secondary work under them instead of a huge, thick lymphedematous hamburger we sometimes get out of other flaps. So I think that is a big plus point on venous flaps. I thank you, Dr. Karthikeyan, and let's discuss the questions.
Can I join?
I think that's Dr. Ravin Tatte now.
Oh,
Oh, sir. Welcome, sir.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I've always been fascinated by the venous flap for the simple reason that we can harvest a very thin flap.
Yes.
And if we can somehow or the other use those veins, because in our original paper also, what Mukund showed by the transverse sections of the veins, there is a very good network of capillaries around the vein. And the number of arteria venosa are much higher than in an artery. So vein is a very valuable structure. How you will harvest and how, of course, I don't understand the complications of your shunting and clipping and all that. Like Mukund told you, it was an accident, but you have to try something to get a successful accident. Like he said, that unipedical venous flap, for example, the saphenous or the cephalic, they're very thin, they settle down very easily. You don't have a large pedicle and it almost becomes like an island, because otherwise when you rotate a fasciocutaneous flap, there is always the bridge which forms a little ridge on the side. You can cut right up to the vein, just leave some loose areolar tissue. You can, for example, cover of the patella, cover of a post-traumatic or a post-burn contracture of the elbow. The flap is extremely suitable. In any case, congratulations. I had gone out for a walk. As I walked in, my daughter told me that your name is being mentioned. This is a long time ago. Is it 40 years, Mukund, or is it less?
35 years.
35 years. Oh, nice. People are remembering. Nice. Very nice paper, and all the best.
Thank you.
I think venous flaps are very thin and they will definitely succeed. There is some trick there which ultimately will be solved. One of them, of course, is what Mukund said. You have to paralyze the veins.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
All the best and congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir.
We can't travel. If you come to Mumbai, please come and meet me.
Will do. It's
Sure,
my honor,
please.
sir. Award, sir. Thank you for this
It
award.
will be my privilege to meet you. I have had two extraordinary hours today. One is your paper and the other is the lecture that Mukund sent me about Raja. Raja spoke about the ISSH meeting.
Yes.
What a lovely evening I have had. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I think, Karthikeyan, we should go to the questions.
Yes, sir.
Sir, can I read, sir? Or should
Please.
Sir, one of the questions is Karthikeyan sir has posted, is it possible to identify the pattern of veins pre-operatively? I think that pattern of veins is there in the forearm. So all we need to do is raise, like I said, raise the tourniquet, and you can always do. But the concept is, once you have designed your recipient artery and the vein, where you are going to place which is your good artery and vein, only then this pattern make some sense, because then you have to plan it reverse. So you can always we can raise the forearm and then we can mark it. We do it pre-operatively sometimes to have an idea, like whether we got a good H flap or a good Y flap, how the veins exposed. We can do it pre-operatively, but we do find veins, and it is just going from distal to more proximal, and hence the entire forearm is available. So
Gopi,
that
there
is
is one more question which asks you what happens if the patient is obese. Then will you still see the veins? By Dr. Ramani.
So luckily, that is what I said. So we try to augment the venous structure by putting the tourniquet, inflating it to 80 to 100 millimeter, which defines, or which we get more, the venous pattern becomes more augmented.
So
Only if we see.
You managed in obese patients as well.
Till now, we have not had that problem, sir. But yes, if we encounter, maybe that may be a limiting step. But we have been able to design the flaps, sir, in such a case.
Then Dr. Purushottam's question is very interesting.
Sir.
How to distinguish between venous congestion and venous anastomosis problem? Have you re-explored any of the anastomosis?
Sir, I got only small submission to make. What we do is, because we said this congestion comes after 3 to 5 days, sir. The congestion comes, so first 2-3 days, if there is congestion, then naturally it becomes an anastomotic problem. The congestion comes, what we term congestion is there only when the circulation comes established, and after 3 to 5 days. So after 3 to 5 days, if the congestion comes, we have to only wait. But yes, if it is immediate post-op period, in the first 24 to 48 hours, then we try to explore, but we have not explored. So most of the time we have thought that the first 72 hours, the flap looks very robust. Even in the 3 flaps which we lost, the flap looks very good in the first few hours. But as the time goes, we found that it has capped out and we have lost the flap, sir.
Right. Dr. Ramani's question, in diagrammatic representation, the clip looks very easy. How practical is it in patients who have a lot of subcutaneous fat?
Sir, it is easy, sir, because when we flip it over, we can see the venous pattern. It is easily visible, and the fat is there, but the vein is, when we turn it over, we see it much clearly. We can even, with a nice, with a gentle, separation, we can just press and see the venous communique, and we can clip the vein. More often than not, even forget in the rush of the movement initial times. We have to remember to identify the pattern and get the clip. Otherwise, we are excited to go ahead with anastomosis.
I think
Mukund, can I talk for a minute?
Yes, sir.
Can I talk for a minute, Mukund?
Yes.
You know, I was writing the chapter on lymphatic surgery. They have got an instrument by which you can make out veins, it seems. There is some instrument by which, this Gujlanwar chap, Rajendra Gujlanwar, when he doesn't find any veins, he uses an instrument by which he can see very fine veins. So therefore, and it's not a very expensive instrument.
Okay, we'll check.
So the anesthesia people, I've seen them using when they want to give an IV cannula, then they use it, it comes a shade and they try to give it. But for us, we can, if we do inflate the tourniquet, we generally find a good pattern there, sir.
Because in lymphatic surgery, Mukund's question about the obesity, those veins in a very obese patients are very difficult to make out. So therefore, the other thing, before I leave, I think you should progress and try and produce a machine which can keep a flap alive. That is a dream that I have. You have a machine, you take out a flap, preserve it, put on a machine, and when the defect comes, just put the machine on. It's like a butcher's shop. Whatever flap you want, it is well cryo-preserved, put on the body, and the machine starts, something like that. In any case, again, congratulations.
We will move to the question by Selva. Selva says, heparin for how long?
Sir, in my group, when we are doing, we give heparin only at the time of harvesting the flap, and then initially we never gave, but later we found that it is better to give. So we give for like a free flap for 5 days. We have started giving LMWH, that is post-op 1 single shot. Otherwise, heparin is given before we harvest the flaps.
Okay. I think the questions in the chat box have been answered. What about the YouTube, Dr. Karthikeyan?
There are no questions there on YouTube, sir.
Okay. And Dr. Ramani has replied saying that's the pediatric venous Doppler for IV access.
Okay, sir.
In reply to Dr. Ravin Tatti's point.
Sir.
And Selva says it's called vein mapper. So, yeah.
Yes, sir. So, if there are no more questions, would you like to wind up? Would you like to sum up before you wind up, sir?
To sum up, I want to say to everyone, venous flaps are very easy to do and require far more investment of time and intellectual energy rather than just stick to the conventional flaps, because we might be onto something and they might be very, very, like he said, they might become workhorses if done properly.
In your opinion, what do you think is the reason? He gave a few reasons why the venous flaps have not become very popular.
Yeah.
What do you think are the reasons, sir? They've not become very popular.
I'm going to make a very controversial statement here. I think they didn't become very popular because they came from India and the East, and they did not come from the Occidental world. Now, people will hang me from the nearest lamppost for being politically incorrect, but this is a sociological perspective.
Okay. So I think now that somebody has been able to, I mean, Venus flaps, since they were described, he had some hesitation. I think now the hesitation should have come down with all these talks going on, with all your studies that you have done along with Dr. Ravin Thatte, sir. I think we should start doing it. Maybe it's the hesitation, the fear of whether it will work.
Correct.
Thank you so much, sir. It has been great interacting with you and Dr. Ravin, sir. It was so nice to have him in our program. Thank you for inviting him also. And thank you, Dr. Gopi. I think this is the main motive of this program is to introduce such people, youngsters, as Dr. Thatte sir said. We need to introduce the younger generation who are going fast forwarding the studies and the work. So thank you so much, Dr. Gopi, and thank you Dr. Thatte sir, for your time and sharing your experience. It was great having you all here. We shall be meeting again. Thank you, Professor J. James sir, Jagan Mohan sir, and Dr. Surya also. So we've introduced
a few lighter moments.
Yes, sir.
The Gopi was telling about the equipment which the anesthetists use.
Sure.
Once a rep brought that equipment, and we all put our hands underneath, we all could see the veins. Then we brought a patient, a obese patient. The patient put the hand, and the veins could not be seen. The representative was blinking for some time. Then he didn't talk anything. He gathered this equipment and walked away. That is the use of that instrument. Where the veins could be seen very clearly, those hands, we put it under the equipment we are able to see. Not for the fatty patients. It's not useful at all.
It's like the discovery of the ether, sir. When there was a fat patient was given and they could not do it by Morton, when they tried to do it in the history, and he gave the ether as anesthesia for dental extraction for an obese patient, he failed. But later they proved that ether was very good, sir. It's like akin to that.
Yeah, Dr. Karthikeyan, the sentence from Sushruta you wanted.
Yes, sir.
Kanubandhena jivitaha, which is a samas, which if you break it, it means saha anubandhena jivitaha. Meaning it lives by the connection. That is Sushruta's physiology of flaps.
Yes, sir.
Sushruta described the pedicle by saying this couplet.
Okay, so it lives by the continuity.
Correct.
And
through continuity, it lives.
Yes, through continuity, it lives. And that is exactly what this program is about. The continuity of our specialty also through the younger generation.
Perfect.
Thank you so much,
Perfect.
sir.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Good night. We shall meet again next week at the same time at 6 o'clock on Tuesday for yet another session of STEP program. Thank you everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much.